Mama, is God real?
Is marriage for life?
Do we have to be baptized?
Is drinking really wrong?
Well, that's your interpretation.
Where do I come from?
Do we really have to have authority for what we do?
Where is God when I need Him?
Rise up, O men of God. His kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and in the night of wrong.
Hello, friends, and welcome again to the Shield of Faith, a program that is dedicated to answering your questions and discussing spiritual matters. My name is Wes Garland, and I preach for the Northwest Church of Christ in Clay County, Tennessee, and we also have with us, as always, Scott Gann.
Hey,
he is a preacher at the Philippi Church of Christ in Tompkinsville, Kentucky, and we also have with us Eric Pitcock.
Hey, Wes.
He is the preacher at the Gamaliel Church of Christ in Gamaliel, Kentucky. But friends, we are starting a two-part series in dealing with the qualification of elders. Now, whenever you look throughout the New Testament, you find that the Lord Himself established His own church and gave His own church a certain organization and a certain way in which it was to be led. And whenever you look into the Scriptures, you find that these men are actually known as elders, bishops, presbyters, shepherds, overseers. But all of these different names are all referring back to the same person. Now, guys, did you understand that? These are not different people, but yet these are all referring back to the same person or position.
I think in the religious world today we need to take a pause here and help us to understand better the situation that the religious world's in. They don't see these things as different people or different, they believe in a different system than what the Bible actually teaches.
That's right.
And maybe we could address that later on another subject, but we need to press this point that a pastor is the same thing as an elder.
Amen.
And an elder is the same thing as a shepherd and an overseer. But I just thought that we need to take a pause right then and address that because of how mixed up that is in the religious world today.
Not only that, Scott, but there's always a multiplicity
Absolutely.
of these individuals that we see, that we don't see in the denominational world. They often have, some type of title. I'm Dr., Reverend, Pastor, so-and-so.
Right, absolutely.
And they put this title on them. But we see from the Bible that the word pastor is a scriptural word.
Absolutely.
But it's referring to the office of an elder and not just a one individual that's supposed to lead.
One-man pastoral system as they use.
How many times do you actually see in churches today people who are known as just a pastor?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And they always refer back, guys, and I do want to say this very, very kindly and very lovingly, but very firm.
Absolutely.
Whenever you are looking at the preacher as the pastor, we do have to understand that all preachers are not pastors. But now there are some preachers that are out there that are pastors, but they are under the pastoral, scriptural pastoral system.
They meet the qualifications that we're about to go over
That's
today.
Right. And so what I'm talking about is he's not the only pastor. He's not a one-man person, but yet it's basically one out of at least 2 to 3 people that are actually overseeing this work.
It's always referenced as a plurality in the Scriptures.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand that. You don't have just one pastor. You have to have a plurality if you're speaking where the Bible speaks. And that's what we want to do. Always make an appeal for what the Scripture says about things instead of what man thinks about things.
That's correct.
That's right. But whenever you really get it back into the Scriptures, friends, what you see is that before these people can ever become elders, there are certain qualifications in which God has given them that they have to be proven in every single one of these areas. Because if they miss only in one, they are disqualified.
Right.
Now, today what we're going to be dealing with is the qualifications of elders, and you start seeing that there are at least 32 to 33 different qualifications, and since there's so many of them, we're only going to be dealing with half of them here in this program today. But whenever you look at it, the way in which we are going to basically discuss the qualifications today, we're going to be breaking these things up into different groups. And today, what we're going to be dealing with are the positive and negative qualifications. And what I'm talking about, positive and negative, those things that must be there, and the negative are the things that cannot, in any possible way, ever be there.
Those knots that we see in the Bible.
Yeah. That's right. So the way in which we have divided these things up in groups, we're going to be dealing with the character, we're going to be dealing with self-control, the attitude toward materialism, and also spiritual experience. Now, to start everything off, guys, I would like to go ahead and just read the very first thing in which Paul tells Timothy there in 1 Timothy chapter 3, where you can go there and see in verses 1 through 7, and also Titus chapter 1. You can see there also the qualifications of elders there. But the very first thing in which he tells Timothy there in chapter 3 and verse 1, he says, "This is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work."
Right.
Now, the very first thing which we got to see here is that a person has to be having that desire. Because whenever you think about it this way, have you all ever done anything that you just really did not want to do, but yet you were forced to do it?
Right. Yeah.
We have this on a daily basis, right?
You're not going to do your best at anything
No.
that you're forced
Right.
to do. You really have to have a deep, abiding desire
Yes.
to ever fulfill a goal or anything. So we understand that.
Right. So whenever we're dealing with this, the same mindset as what we were just talking about, how if you're not really desiring to do something, you're not going to put your best at it.
Right.
And do your best at it.
That's right.
So the Lord himself, he has always, from the very beginning, desired the best.
You know, and I might add to that. Not only, you know, we understand that the person has to have a desire, but a lot of times it's used as an excuse to not
right.
become an elder.
Right.
That's right.
And you know that's wrong also.
And I don't think people should do that. I think, you know, members of a congregation and people that have good, honest men that meet all these qualifications, I believe they ought to motivate them and encourage them,
Right.
And stand behind them to want to try to become an elder, instead of just, you know, being scared of. Because I mean, it's a big responsibility, and we certainly can understand, you know, someone being somewhat hesitant and
Right.
you know, about to step into this particular position, but you know, we want to encourage them
Right.
to have that desire.
As we look at all these qualifications, if a person in his life has all these qualifications and they're in place and they've been put in place and they're maturing and they're growing, then a person at that status in his spiritual life should, most importantly, desire to be a shepherd or an elder.
Yeah.
I mean, they should. If they meet all these qualifications, and they should desire that work.
Think about it this way. If somebody is really a true Christian and have been working on all these qualifications and they meet all these qualifications, there's not going to be any ifs, ands, or buts.
Right.
They are going to want to do it.
Absolutely.
Because they see the importance. They want to help out the church the best they can.
Yeah, they see the need that the kingdom
Yes.
has for good qualified men to take this position.
And there's a shortage
Yeah, that's right.
in the brotherhood today because of the fact that either we have not been training on it, and I think we could do a lot of lessons just on how we need to prepare now for the future in training young men to be able to meet these qualifications. We've got a lot of generation gaps there where we have a lot of older people, but a lot of training process is not taking place right now.
Because there's certainly things that we can do to cultivate a mind that would want to become an elder and that would strive to be these. You know, we can talk to our young people, telling, you know, I would encourage members of the church, you know, as you see these young men growing up, young children from a very young age, and planning their mind, you'd be a good elder one of these days.
Right.
You know, you live for the Lord, you work hard, you try to be a godly person, and you'll be a great leader and worker in the kingdom. Instill that in their mind as they grow up and as they, you know, are members of that church.
As we set goals in front of them
That's
to
right.
achieve materialistic things or physical goals, you know, but we always do that as parents and
Yeah.
stuff. But set these spiritual goals in front of them and tell them they can accomplish
Yeah.
these things.
Take
And it's
the-
a better work than they'll ever
That's right.
do in a physical or materialistic
Do those
nature.
things that would cultivate that type of attitude. You know, the elders, they could take young men with them visiting.
Right.
Preachers could take young men out with them visiting and seeing people, and you know, they could begin to cultivate an attitude and a disposition that shows them there's a need for this, and that would cause them to want to fulfill that role.
When they got to that point
Yeah.
and met all these qualifications,
That's right.
they would desire
That's
to
right.
see the great need
That's
for
right.
it.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
Let's get some
Now-
of these
now notice
characteristics
this.
here.
He says, not only that, he says, this is the faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. He automatically, right after that, says that is not enough. Because whenever you really look at seeing the work, in which we're going to be dealing with a little bit later in the programs, you're going to see that this work has to have qualifications in order to establish and to actually do those works.
And so he says, okay, a bishop then must be. Desire is not enough.
The emphasis is not necessarily as much on the position, but it is the work, that it is on the work. And all these characteristics, all of these qualifications, they help a person to be able to handle the work.
That's right.
And so that's what we're going to look at today and see how these fall into place and see how these can help a shepherd, an elder, a pastor, an overseer, to be able to accomplish the work that he needs to accomplish.
So the very first thing in which we look at here, the very first thing that Paul tells Timothy here, right after the desire, he says that they must be blameless. Guys, what does that mean?
Well, simply to be above reproach. It is a type and kind of person that when people look at them, they see an individual that is what it says. He's blameless. There isn't really anything distinctive that they can point out. That this person.
There's no grounds for somebody to accuse them of doing something. They've not lived that type of lifestyle.
That's right. And this is an important qualification, as all of them are. And we can see the application in this, because if you have an individual that's blameless and he goes in to handle a particular situation, the person that they're dealing with, they don't have anything that they can say, oh, look at you,
I hold this against you.
Look at what you've done. You're telling me I need to change, but oh, look how horrible of a thing you've done. And so by meeting this qualification, this is a qualification not only that elders should meet, but that Christians should need to meet.
I think you're right there. I think as we look at these,
yes,
every Christian should be trying to, the ones that they can, of course. A woman couldn't be a husband of one
That's right.
wife, but
certainly,
we see the fallacy in that.
Certainly Christians need to be blameless.
And if we view the Scriptures, almost all of these qualifications are to be met by us as Christians too also.
What about this one? What about this one?
But I do want to say something about that blameless. A lot of people say, well, he's blameless, he's without sin. That doesn't mean that he is without sin. It's that he's just not habitually living in sin. He's not practicing sin.
Having something in which somebody can easily keep on bringing up, saying, listen, how can you talk to me about this when you're doing this?
Well, like a hypocrite would,
Exactly. Exactly. What about vigilant? What does that mean?
Vigilant would be an individual that's watchful. They're conscientious of not only themselves but of the church, of the situations that the church is in, the situation that they find themselves in. They're alert. They're aware. Peter tells us to be vigilant, to be sober, to be vigilant. Because your adversary, the devil, walketh around as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. We're to be alert. We're to be aware.
It's that watchman.
That's right.
And that's what they were to do. They were the Old Testament, what we would say, shepherds and keepers, because they were to be watchful, to watch over and protect the people that they were to protect.
This sort of fulfills their own name that's given to them, talking about being an overseer, or a shepherd.
Shepherd, that's exactly right.
That's what
they're
it's all about.
Right.
A shepherd is an overseer.
So the names are not actually different offices, but it's basically just showing the different works in which are involved.
I think every one of them, there's 3 Greek words that derive from these 6 designations of what we would say accommodative elder, just using one of those terms. That shows the different aspects and works of the eldership.
Okay, we keep on going down, and he says there in 1 Timothy 3, verse 2, that a person must be of good behavior. What does that mean, Scott?
Well, of good behavior, we're talking about somebody that is orderly. They have good behavior. They're orderly in all things. They're courteous. They're polite. They're kind to people. They're just they're the type of people that you would want to be around. The type of people that would draw you to them. The type of person that you would want to lead you. That's what. That's basically, in essence, what that means.
If we were to take the opposite of that, being disorderly.
Right.
And we can see how that wouldn't function very well in a leadership role, or even as a Christian, being a disorderly Christian, certainly wouldn't work.
Which includes, a modest person, a humble person, a good behavior. We understand basically what that is.
Well, putting all this in the application now, being of good behavior, how hard would it be to be under an eldership when there's a man, or even all the men in the eldership were very rude?
It wouldn't work. They wouldn't be able to work with people. They wouldn't be able to communicate effectively with individuals. People wouldn't take them as seriously. They would want to, avoid them. And we perhaps work with people, been around people that just we don't really enjoy being around. They're the type and kind of person that they're rude and unkind and mean-spirited, and we don't. That's not the kind of person that we want leading us.
Right, absolutely.
And we certainly can understand that.
See, it's just I don't know about the viewers that are watching this, but I know that we, the people on this program, we would not want to have overseers in which we really just did not and could not stand, that we didn't want to be around, we didn't want to have anything to do with, but yet these are people who are watching over us, loving us enough to care about our souls, to want to do the best really for us.
Right.
That's right.
Well, they're basically what people see. Sometimes people see them set up in a high position. Well, here's the elders. They're somebody, especially when they have a special work, they have a special job. But basically, they're God's servants because they're serving us. They're trying to protect us. They are the most highest servants that we have, really, because they are serving us, and they'll give account too if they're not doing what they need to. What about this lovers of good? I think that means that that lovers of good, and also it says they're good men. It kind of, some of these go kind of hand in hand, have a little bit different connotation to one another, but they're similar in some attributes, and we see how they help out. With the lover of good is, love produces all that is good. So you're going to be a good person if you love good and you love to do good. Then you're going to be a good person, and I think those things go hand in hand with one
just
another.
like these next two. What about just and holy? These two go hand in hand, but
Right.
yet they have different definitions.
Right.
But yet it's all referring back to the same thing as being just, a person who is found holy, a person who is found right, being justified in the sight of God, and holy being a person who's spiritually minded, that's wanting to do things, that's wanting to do what God wants them to do.
Right.
You think about somebody that's just. I'm thinking, of an individual that's fair and honest.
Right.
Yes.
Nobody wants to deal with somebody that's dishonest. And when you have somebody that's overseeing, that's a pastor of the church, of a congregation, one of the pastors or a shepherd or bishop or overseer, they have to be somebody that's fair and honest.
Right.
You don't want somebody that has partiality towards somebody, because what if you had to implement discipline?
Right.
What if you had to correct a particular problem, call somebody, encourage somebody? And, people certainly don't want to see somebody that shows favoritism to one group or one type of person. You're going to have, as a leader of a congregation, you're going to have individuals that are poor, downtrodden, beaten down, and then you're going to have the rich and famous. Yeah. And you cannot be an individual that shows partiality, and that's unfair, that's biased, because you have to be fair, you have to be honest, just, you have to do what's right, whether that person, no matter what they have or what they've done, you have to be just.
You have to treat everybody the same. I mean, that's difficult to do. I mean, not everybody's the same, so you have to deal with people differently.
That's right.
But you deal with them on the same basis, and that's part of that being just and holy. We think about that. That means that we're undefiled. It means righteous, really. That we're in a right relationship with God. Righteous and holy go hand in hand. Undefiled. He's unpolluted. It's a person that just doesn't. I mean, he's just not polluted with sin. He's not polluted in his life. He doesn't have things that are holding him back. The Bible teaches, "Be ye holy as I am holy." Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and He will exalt you.
All these characteristics we've talked about so far are those characteristics that deal with the character of a man, the character of an elder. But then, we also see that there are certain qualifications that's laid down by the Holy Spirit that deal with things like self-control.
Right, absolutely.
We see things like an individual that is to be sober, not only to be sober, but patient and temperate. And these are qualifications that we see that deals with the man's self-control. So as we think about, somebody that's sober, we're thinking about somebody that's level-headed.
Yeah.
somebody that can think clearly.
Right. It's not cloudy-minded.
That's right. We don't want an individual that's making decisions that that cannot think properly.
Right. Can't think clearly, precisely. And basically that's where we get. We talk. Most people, when they hear the word sober, they think of not drunk.
That's right.
But you know what? It's really kind of the same thing in a sense. When you're drinking, you're intoxicated, and you're not thinking clearly. You're not thinking rationally. But this doesn't have anything to do with alcohol. This has to do with clear thinking, a clear mind, being able to make clear decisions and distinct decisions on certain. In certain decisions and attributes.
It's interesting whenever you look at the word sober being clear-minded and always keeping that clear mind. It sort of goes right there with some of the negative qualifications that we've got. A person who is sober cannot be given to wine because the alcoholic drink actually
clouds
the mind.
That's right. That's
so
exactly
they can't do that. It cannot be a striker, cannot be a brawler, not self-willed, not soon angry. If a person is not is doing these things, they're not sober-minded.
Right. They're not thinking clearly. A brawler, he doesn't think clearly.
Right. He's just mad.
A striker, he didn't think clearly. He's not thinking rationally. He's cloudy-minded.
Yeah.
His mind's clouded with anger. You see how some of these are positive, and then you have to have the positive to overcome the negative.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so these positives has to be in place, and then it gives the negatives. These will keep people from doing these negative characteristics in this self-control or temperance that we're having to
It sort of goes right there what you were talking about. All the character qualifications that we were already talking about, being blameless, vigilant, of good behavior, lovers of good men, just and holy. If a person is sober, patient, and temperate, all these things, they're not going to be these other things.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're patient, you're not going to be soon to angry.
Yeah.
That's right.
The knots that we see, the not given to wine, the not a striker, the not a brawler, not self-willed, not soon. All those knots become so much easier and become second nature.
Because they're not going to be in your mind. It's not going to be part of your character.
If we fulfill those positive characteristics that we've already talked about, being blameless and vigilant, of good behavior, lover of good men, our lover of good things, just and holy, those positive things.
So if you're self-controlled too, it's the temperance, self-controlled, it's going to overcome all these things like brawler, self-striking, or a striker. You're not going to be soon to angry. If you can control yourself, if you can think clearly, you can be patient, and you can control yourself. Just think what the church would be like if all members had those three characteristics.
That's right.
And these are qualifications. These are definite qualifications for elders. And we'll see how they play out when dealing with people.
Think about somebody that's not self-willed. I mean, that's difficult. I mean, because we're the type of kind of people that are thinking of ourselves a lot of the time, and we fail to see other people's needs. And so many times we try to put ourselves first. And for a man to be in a leadership role of the church, he has to be an individual that is willing and ready to put other people before himself. And he's not.
He's got to be that good example.
He's got to be a good example. He's not in it for a title that he can put on the bulletin. He's not in it. He's not in it. So he can tell people in town that he's elder so and so, but he's in it because he is interested in souls. He's interested in the kingdom, interested in doing those things that are profitable and beneficial for other individuals. And so, we think about not being self-willed, not in it for yourself, and that plays a vital role as you think about the decisions that has to be made.
Right.
You're making
these
those
optional matters that needs to be in place. You will give up your self-will. You'll give up your judgment in a matter of option to benefit the whole congregation. That plays into part of this definition of being self-willed.
Because so many times we see individuals that are in leadership positions. It's all about what they want. It's all about what they think. It's all about
what's best for the congregation.
It's all about the direction that I want the congregation to go. It's all about them.
Right.
And I think that's an individual that's self-willed.
Right. And see, these are qualifications. They have to meet these qualifications to be a true elder. So we understand that this self-will it plays a major part in this aspect of
Now,
these qualifications of elders.
As we've already looked at the positive and negative things, along with the negative also comes with the attitude toward materialism. It says there that that person cannot be greedy of filthy lucre, meaning not being greedy of trying to get gain by unrighteous ways.
Right.
And he cannot be covetous, meaning that he can't be desiring what he does not have. Because whenever you think about a man that's doing this, is not really looking after his faith in God to provide him with his needs, that he will provide him his needs in a way in which he will not, Matthew 6, verse 33, all these things shall be added unto you.
Right.
If you're doing the will of God, there's no question about it. He's going to be providing it. But also spiritual experience.
Well, you have also in those attitudes toward materialism is covetousness. You can't covet, be a covetous person and be a shepherd. That's one of those qualifications that you can't be. That's another one of those knots, and it has to do with materialism. We see that covetous in the Bible, in the New Testament, he says that is idolatry because you're putting things before the Lord and His work. So we understand not even a Christian can be a covetous person.
That's right.
So if we can meet these qualifications, and we can better help ourselves.
Now, very lastly, the spiritual experience. It says there in 1 Timothy 3 and verse 6 that man cannot be a novice or a new convert. What he's talking about here is a person cannot be a new convert in that he has not had enough experience in order to guide the church in the way they should go, because they've got to know a whole lot of things in order to guide and to do the work in which is brought to them.
Right.
You cannot be effective in the work of an eldership unless you know what you've got to be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
A new convert couldn't come in and be a shepherd or an elder because of the fact that he doesn't have enough Bible knowledge. He doesn't know the things that he's supposed to do. And and an elder, in a sense, is an age-wise. There's certain qualifications that you just can't pick up like this. That's right. I mean, you just can't do it. It's impossible.
You've got to live it, and you've got to learn it.
You've got to live it and learn it. So a lot of these things, and we're going to look at, and I think in our next lesson, we'll explore the knowledge of the Word of God that the shepherds have to have as qualifications. And I think that's a good leading point into our next session.
That's right. Friends, we want to thank you from the staff here at Shield of Faith. Thank you so very much for watching us. I hope that you have brought out your Bibles and studied with us for this last 30 minutes. Go to our website. I've written a track on this. It's entitled Strengthening Elders, Shepherding the Flock, free of charge. Make as many copies as you want. Just print off on your printer. Make as many copies as you want. But until next time, may God bless. Just think about it.